Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending this or for watching it later. And today I wanted to show you the Ruby library that I worked on during December to solve an issue that I have a personal issue with this. I attempted multiple times to solve this problem that I will show you in a bit. And this is the maybe fourth attempt that I tried to make my life easier and hopefully yours as well if you have to implement many GraphQL queries on your Shopify projects if you on a Ruby backend essentially, or maybe someone else life easier. So let's dive into this. Okay, if any of you have ever written a GraphQL query, you will know that they are pretty verbose. And right now, there isn't a fine way, if you will, a nice way to have a query mapped to something that's really usable from the get-go. Because every query usually starts in this way. You define a pretty verbose string with variables or just values are coded into them. Then you call a GraphQL client. And by the way, I will focus only on the Shopify GraphQL schemas because otherwise things will go out of hand really quickly. Okay, then you define this query, you run the query, and then you start drilling into the response, which is just a huge JSON response, so you can map it to a hash. And you need to every time drill into the attributes, in the connections, in edges, nodes, and it gets tedious really, really fast. Then we have some kind of abstractions because you don't want to replicate the same query over and over, essentially. So we started to abstract the most used queries into classes. Then we started to have query superclasses to abstract the common behavior away. Maybe we introduced some OpenStruct to make the responses easier to handle. So instead of drilling in the responses via the square bracket, you drill into the responses with dot notation. But it's usually the same drilling and working, and it's just some syntax sugar on the response essentially to make them more bearable. And this is the approach that applied by the Shopify GraphQL gem that we use in, I believe, in pretty much all of our projects when we deal with better GraphQL queries. However, it's still the focus is still on the query itself. We focus on the query response. We lose some of the ergonomics that we are used as Rails developers. We are a bit spoiled because we are used to some more ergonomics. Also, there is another piece of the puzzle that wasn't working really for me, because when you define different queries, since GraphQL is explicitly designed to fetch the right data at the right moment in the right place, you might have a query that fetches a product with a certain set of attributes. Then you might have another query that fetches products with a totally different set of attributes. And you have to work, your brain has to work extra. Your brain has to work overtime to understand, okay, this product in this place has these attributes, and in the other place it doesn't. So what am I dealing with? maybe we are querying the variant, and in some places they have the SKU, in other places they have only the price. And these get, like, it's another nail that inflicts on yourself. So we have different objects which are the same core concepts, such as products and variants, with different shapes and different attributes. Also, if you throw another GraphQL schema in the mix, the things get really messy because we are like going exponentially in a harder direction. Because you might have the admin API schema, which is the usual one that you use. But if you are building like a customer account portal and you don't want to incur in API rate limiting, or like you want to have like secure connection without possibility of customers seeing other customers' data and whatnot, you might want to have you might want to use the customer account API, which of course they can return the same entities. You can return a customer, you can return an order. However, as you can see, like by the example that here, if the customer is returned by the customer account API, it will have the email address in the default email address attribute and the email address then. And instead, if it comes from the admin API, the path is different. So you might have the same conceptual object with different schemas. And like we are going really deep right now in the problems that I couldn't even like wrap my head around. I asked myself, why this is so hard? However, like these are just some of the issues, because the issue is way more widespread, because in the same code base, we might have inconsistency in query usage and query definition. And not to talk about different projects. Maybe on a project we do things in a way, and in another project we do things in another way. Then also, when you have queries scattered all across the code base, you might have like an increased maintenance burden, because you need to update the API version when Shopify decides to update the schema. And you need to go over all of those queries to update the attributes, return values, and also update all of the tests to make them work again. And these compound to a slower velocity, essentially, because you have to focus on maintaining the plumbing, maintaining the infrastructure, instead of like shipping things that bring value to the customer, essentially. I want to mention a couple of experiments that I've done to try to solve all of these problems. And the first one was maybe too ambitious, because I started to think about, okay, all of the information is in the GraphQL schema. We can just ingest this humongous 17 megabyte JSON file and like define dynamically all of the classes, all of the objects and whatnot. But of course, even Shopify couldn't follow their own conventions in the GraphQL schema. So essentially, the scope was too broad, too generic, and I dumped the project, essentially, dumped the experiment. Then I also tried to, in the query classes, try to have some sort of instance method definition via instance eval on the query responses, but that was messy enough, because you had some attributes that you accessed via hash attributes or a dot notation, and then you had methods, and like it wasn't elegant, and it was really messy. Then I tried to experiment with ActiveResource, which is like a race integration that actually makes you use REST APIs as the database layer for objects, and it didn't work well with the GraphQL patterns. However, it gave me some great inspiration. And what I settled was essentially building active resource for Shopify GraphQL. So where the focus was on domain entities, and as we may know them as models. So the models are these table contacts that we can reason about in the code base. A product, a customer, like a product is always a product, a customer is always a customer, regardless of the GraphQL schema they are coming from. And you should expect them to have always the same attribute unless you want S. Then the attributes are declared on your models. So you define what you want. And because of these, the cognitive load when you work drops because, okay, I know that this is a variant. I know it has this attribute. I don't even have to care what query this is coming from. It's a variant and it behaves like a variant. So essentially we needed something similar to ActiveRecord, but for GraphQL. So like seems easy enough. No, of course. And now it's the time that I show you how it works. Let me share the correct thing, of course, which is the entire screen because I am not really. Okay, let me start I have built a simple Shopify store on which I installed like a empty Shopify app from the Ruby template. I am starting the application now, the race application, so should be booted up. Okay, let me check the Dev Store. Okay. The app should be connected. Okay. This is just an empty Shopify app that you installed on your dev stores. And what I did to essentially use this gem, I want to show you really quickly what I've done to ease the live coding that I will be doing right now. Since this app is installed on only this store for now, I added a couple of helper methods. So we always operate in the context of the first shop that I've installed this app on, and it's my dev store loaded with sample data from Shopify. So expect snowboards and ski equipment. And in the gem file, we can see that I've installed the gem, which is actually available. Okay, I'm using it from the local directory, but if I remember correctly, yes, it's at the version 1.0, so should be ready for production use because it's what we're using in the committee project right now to abstract some of the queries because we have plenty of work yet to do to migrate all of the existing queries to this gem. Okay, after you install the gem, how can you get started? We can start by defining models as we do in Race, essentially. So I can create a product model, and let's say, like, I want to call it product, and I want it to subclass the, the model class provided by the gem. So these will inherit a lot of methods that actually allows us to do these kind of things. So I can define that my product model will have a ID attribute and it will have like a title attribute. And okay, for now, we can start by text. Let's open a console and let's see if it works. Okay, I have my product class, and I can maybe ask for all of the products. Right now, you have to explicitly, whoa, that's a hard word, explicitly ask it to load these things. But as you can see, you can like run product.all and ask the gem to actually run the GraphQL query that right now I have set up to log the queries in the, oh, I didn't show you the configuration, which is just this. You define a lambda to essentially pick the query and the variables provided by the gem, and you hook it in any of your Shopify or GraphQL client that you want. So right now I'm using the default Shopify API admin client, but you are free to use whatever client you want. And that's pretty much that. As you can see by the console output, right now I have essentially an array with the product objects, and maybe I can instantiate them. Okay, I shouldn't have done that, but maybe I can pick one and ask it what it, well, okay. I can get the title from product easily, but maybe I want to add another attribute. So maybe product type. So we'll reload the console, and just as easily, I will have the product type in the response. And as you may know, like Shopify doesn't use the underscore notation. And as you can see by the login, even if it's a bit hard to see, no, this is just the response, sorry. But we can actually log the queries. So we can introspect what's happening. We can see that the default Shopify attribute naming convention uses camel case, and instead we defined our attribute as like a underscore case. So this is automatic for you. Also, under the hood, there's also this thing happening because I could omit this particular call because I didn't have to say, okay, this class represents this GraphQL product, GraphQL type, sorry, because it's actually the same name. However, as you will see like shortly, this can help in places where even Shopify doesn't follow their own conventions. So we have the power to decide what kind of type is the underlying one, but it's not needed because product is the exact GraphQL type that's used even on the Shopify side. Then let's see what we can do, because querying for all products is useful, but maybe it's not something that we want to do all the time. Maybe we want to find a particular product. So we can use maybe find by. We can maybe query for like this particular product title. It will query the GraphQL with the formatted query as we are typing into it. And it's the GraphQL query, like the Shopify query syntax, is a bit finicky. And if you use the safe notation, such as you are accustomed with the ActiveRecord, you can define the attribute and then the value that you want to query for. But if you want to do more complex queries, such as filtering for wildcard and stuff like that, you have the possibility to actually inject a string instead of a hash as the options. But of course, you have to rely on the Shopify search query syntax, which is not the best. But maybe I could query for all of the products that start with V, and then I don't care what's there. So the star is the wildcard in this particular place. But of course, find by will only return the first one. So let's do a where, which, by the way, returns just a relation. I will have to ask it to load or call each or call to A. And in this case, it will return just the products that start with the. Another fun characteristics of this search is also that the error detection should work. So let's try it. I will try to query for a non-existent attribute, such as, or non-supported attribute, because the search query, where is it? It should be this one. Okay. All of these are supported. They are automatically forwarded to Shopify. The gem doesn't even know what are the supported ones. It relies on the error raised by the API. So if I maybe mistype something such as productize maybe, and I say full, it will raise an error. So it will say that the query validation failed, and I am sure that I am querying only for a loved attribute in this case. But of course, having to deal with the products alone, it's a bit lonely. So we might have to query for variants as well. So let's add a product variant model, which is the Shopify lingo for calling the variant. Product variant active. It's getting annoying to do these kind of things, and we will see how to fix also the subclassing issue really fast. So maybe we can want the ID as well, because I mean the ID pretty much essential. We might ask for the hue and maybe the title of the variant. So let's try to see if it works. The variant. Okay, seems to work. But of course, we are now dealing with two different objects, or well, models, which aren't connected. However, we can do connections directly in the models. So we might decide that the product has many connected variants. And here it will start to break, because the connection on the product GraphQL type is called variants. However, the GraphQL type for the variant is product variant. And if it tries to load like a class called variant, it will fail because it's called actually product variants. So we can actually specify the class of the objects that we want back when we will be querying for the product variants, essentially. Let's see if it works. I can see maybe what's a product with a couple of variants. If I remember correctly, it's the ski wax. Where is it? Okay. Selling plans ski wax. So this ID. Let's try to find it. Okay, the product is found via directly the GID, but of course you can also like use just the numeric ID because the GID can be inferred via the the GraphQL type automatically. So you can deal with the numeric IDs, GIDs, everything works. Then we have, what is this? So this is the wax. We can find the wax and we can ask its variant. Okay, it's not this one. How can I understand what kind of product has many variants? Let's see. What was it?
Because you have two different wax, so maybe you choose the other one.
The other one? That should be this one. Interesting. Why? Okay. And now, what was the other wax?
Oh no, probably it's in the variant.
Okay, fine. This is the product with the variant, and of course, why it doesn't work. Interesting. I can, yeah, good suggestion, product variant where product ID, it's this one. Okay, there is something that's maybe off, and maybe it's a bug that I need to fix. But in this particular case, it works. So let's see if we can actually make them load.
From the error, it looked like the first and last were missing, like first or last.
First or last.
Parameter. You must provide first or last, just in the middle.
Oh,
like error.
Yeah, that's why I totally forgot this one. Because, of course, GraphQL is finicky. Thanks, Marco, for pointing it out, and I totally blanked out on that. Because, of course, the connections on GraphQL need some arguments that are, we cannot abstract all of the dust under the carpet. And what you need to define is also like the default arguments for the connection to work. And if someone can find like a more elegant way to do this, what you need to do is essentially define what kind of arguments will be passed to the connection. So if we try it again, it should work. Let's see. Okay, it works. That was the, thanks, Marco. And yeah, we could raise a more explicit error. Yeah, that's like a sensible thing to do. But now I have defined automatically the connection between the product and the variant. However, as you can see, like it runs another query. Maybe in some places we want to get the products with the variant. So we can do something like that you may be familiar with. You can ask the gem to include the variant, which is plural. And okay, we should have the wax. And as you can see, like the inspect output is something to be refined, but we can actually call the variant. And as you can see, no other query is run because the variant have been asked or queried during the first query. So we can actually leverage GraphQL in its own merit. So in one query, we can query way more stuff and avoid, of course, n+1s or other things, which is interesting. Of course, we can go back to the other entity. So we can go back from the variant to the product with just this one. And let's see if it works. This shouldn't require any special arguments because the way GraphQL works. So we might have, let's start without querying the variants. I can go on this product in the first variant and then ask it the product. However, as you can see, like many queries have been run in the background. So how we can we mitigate this? Of course, we can like eager load the variants, and this still runs the queries even if it's queryless. We should be using like connection caching, and another argument that we might want to in the connection, we can use like inverse of fact. And here we can use inverse of variance. And this is how I discovered like what inverse of did even on ActiveRecord. So we might want this kind of thing. And this runs just the last query that we need. And this shouldn't run any other queries afterwards, because all of the things that we need are actually loaded. Okay. However, we are starting to have some duplication. Okay, I forgot to save. And of course, maybe it was the reason okay, it shouldn't have like that additional query. I thought about that. Okay, we are starting to see that some part of our class definitions are duplicated. Like the ID definition, in my opinion, should be like something that's always available on our models. Like every object should have their ID. And like we have this class that we subclass from. However, nothing stops us in defining like application GraphQL record or whatever superclass that we might want, where we define two attributes in this case, where the ID will represent the numeric ID of the record. So only the integer part of the GID. And then we can map the normal ID that comes from the GraphQL schema in the GID attribute. So we always know that an ID is numeric. In this case, I might want even to cast it as a string. So nothing is stopping me there. And also I can rename the attribute in some other way, because I want the GID to represent the actual GraphQL ID. So if we subclass instead of the raw model, okay, save and reload again. Let's see our wax. We will see that the, well,
because probably you have to remove the attribute here, otherwise
yeah,
it
that's
will
true.
overwrite.
And in fact, I am going too fast because that's what was happening. Thanks, Nasi. And why isn't, okay, I didn't save. Wow. I want autosave always. Okay, and now it works. I feel dumb. And as we can see, like we have the wax ID, and I cannot even type. And we have the wax GID. So another problem that we had like many times over, maybe you had the ID coming from a place, the GID coming from another, you had to compare them together, and comparing the ID with GIDs was just a pain because you have to convert things over and over just to understand if an object was the same as another object. Because maybe on Shopify themes, you have only numeric IDs, and on the backend for GraphQL, you have like GIDs. It gets messy. However, if we standardize this kind of thing at the code base level, easy. So no more headaches on that side. I've shown you how to connect two GraphQL entities together, but maybe we want to connect these kind of objects to our own database objects, maybe. Because here I have the rating model, so like a model to abstract the possibility of customers to rate products, sorry. And this is just a box standard application record. And we can include like GraphQL associations model to actually allow this model to connect to GraphQL instances. We can validate the presence of these attributes, which is the default naming convention. So if you say that active record object belongs to a GraphQL object, which is called product, the convention is that it will look for an attribute called Shopify underscore the name of the connection or association, and then ID. This is the convention, but of course you can specify it with foreign key, and that's pretty much it. Let's see if it works. It should, because I didn't touch this. We have a rating here, and as we can see, has like the Shopify product ID pointing to that one. So .product will happily run a GraphQL query and will return like a working product with all of the attributes that we have defined. And of course, we should be able to go from like products to as many ratings. It should work out of the box, but let's see. So what was the product? This one. Product equal product dot find this thing. Okay. Ratings. Okay, it works. Because it will just take the ID attribute, and this is something that we might want to generalize for broader use, but it will take the ID attribute, which contains only the numeric part, and it will just query the ratings for that particular ID. So nothing really special, but very powerful, especially when you have to link these kind of entities together and maybe do some more interesting part. However, this gem is still incomplete, and because there is also some other, oh, I forgot the metafield thing, because some attributes, okay, Shopify stores can have like custom data on their products and their variants. So maybe you want to have like a metafield attribute. So you can, what was the attribute that I defined? Where is it? Oh, that's called the snowboard length. Okay, quindi let's call it length, because apparently it's very important on snowboard. Sorry, I don't ride a snowboard. But you can say like namespace, which is the namespace provided by the Shopify sample data. Key, what was the key? For length. Okay, should be this one. Because some products have this attribute. This one. No. Okay. The video getter, what was this one? Okay, let's say 50. Okay. Let's do again a product.all.load. Okay, and we have plenty of data. And there's an issue, because we can see that the length has been correctly loaded for also this product that I just updated. And it's essentially a JSON payload. So how can we fix this? Luckily, we can say like type JSON. And this should fix this, because we can have the length, its value, the unit, all automatically. And after the meta field, it comes the meta objects, because Shopify merchants can define many things on their stores with custom data models to extend the Shopify one. And this is something that I still have to wrap my head around. However, there is an escape hatch in this particular case, and I have to copy paste the snippet because it's very verbose. I will paste it here, and I will explain later what it means. Because here we can see essentially the breadth of the things that we can configure on a single attribute. We can define the attribute name. We can define where in the GraphQL query this value will be found, we can define its type, because I know that at the end it will be like a JSON payload that I want. Then we can define, as we saw here with the transform lambda, how to massage the GraphQL response into something usable. And in this particular case, I wanted just to have a simple object with name and logo, and by drilling in the response, so doing the usual GraphQL thing that's not really fun to do. And then we can define even the raw GraphQL string that will be appended to our own fragment. And maybe we have a meta field which references a meta object, and for this meta object we want the name and logo. I am currently working on like abstracting the meta objects and making them like proper models, so this thing is easier to do, but I have yet to complete this kind of work because it's another way of doing things that Shopify has, and it's not really straightforward. However, after this whole gargantuan blob of GraphQL, which is not very elegant, we should be able to, okay, and it's of course broken because okay, it doesn't support, of course, the fact that some products don't have this thing at all. Let's see. Okay, now it works. And good luck finding the thing that's actually, okay, I have to go in the meta field meta objects, supplier, one entry, and it's on the complete snowboard. So let's see if we can actually find by the complete snowboard, and most likely, okay, it works. Because right now the supplier is filled with the data that I expected. And these like wraps the demo part of this presentation, because this is the few features that I was able to implement and actually use in production as of now. So we can go back to the, what was the tab? This one. Long tab. Okay. Let's go a bit further, because this is just one piece of the puzzle. And like Shopify apps need to reinvent and abstract away other things, such as the webhook management, and some is provided by the Shopify API and Shopify app gems. Meta fields is something that maybe more interesting, but we have some abstractions to deal with meta fields and meta objects migrations. Bulk operations is other things that are not fun to work with. Rate limiting is something that I plan to implement in the gem to actually, or at least query rate management rather than limiting. And then there are other things that we might not yet know of that we are reinventing over and over in different Shopify projects. This gem that I've just shown you is another piece of the puzzle that we are building together. We have already like a couple of interesting toolkits that we built and are also public. So what will be the next things that we will have to complete the Shopify Nebulab way? I don't know yet, and maybe you do. So if you want to try it, it's open source on GitHub. If in our organization, if you find bugs or want to propose any new feature or whatever, just feel free to open PRs and issues and just do it. It's easier. And we can discuss in the upcoming Shopify user groups. If someone has any questions or doubts or curiosity, let me know.
Thanks, Nicolo. Yeah, questions. Luca is here. And yeah.
Go to Luca.
I was muted. Hey, thanks, Nicolo. This is great. It was super. I want to know if does it support mutation or not yet, and if you plan to work on it, or yeah.
Right now it's read only because it just like get the items, and currently it doesn't support mutations, especially because Shopify cannot follow its own conventions for mutation naming and mutation attributes. Maybe in some parts they want like a list of arguments, and in some other parts they want maybe a proper GraphQL type which represent the mutation input. And these kind of things is really hard to abstract away when like there is no convention to follow. Like the where queries are easy because it's just the GraphQL type in the plural form. The find by is just the find is just the GraphQL type in a singular form. And these are conventions that are easy to implement. But when they don't have convention to follow, is very hard to like build abstractions on top of. But I will try to get to mutations at some point.
Cool, thanks, makes sense.
Any other doubt or question?
I have one. I just wanted to say thank you because this was a very real problem that we've experienced, at least myself, on a project. So the solution seems excellent, and it was sorely missing. So thank you.
Okay, and let me know if you ever try it, because I mean, we are using it in production right now, and like the most glaring bugs should be squashed, but I mean, you never know what production usage will, I don't know, will yield. I'm pretty sure that like scope management is something else to take into account, because right now this gem is is designed to work on applications that are installed on one shop, or maybe the dev version of that shop. So we expect the scopes to always be available. If we want to use this on distributable apps through the Shopify App Store, most likely like the scope and permission issues will be more prominent. But as of now, in our use case, should be fairly effective. Okay, if we are done.
Yeah, I think it's all. Another Alberto. Yeah.
Go ahead. You're muted. You're muted, Alberto.
You're muted. Just
You're muted on Google Meet, not your physical microphone.
the button Google Meet doesn't work, and I can't mute it. Right.
I will get to Ryan's question. How do tests look like? If you okay, tests look like just regular mocking, essentially. So you might instantiate like instances of a product, and you may want to like assign, like they work as normal active record objects, so you can instantiate them, assign association dynamically. It's not the best way, but either you mock the network layer or you mock the object that you are dealing with. And mostly we are now testing with mocking the objects, as the network layer is like tested elsewhere and we know that it works. But right now it's just mocking the objects, instantiating test objects. Okay, Alberto, we can hear you.
Let's try again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Because I switched from my mobile to here and something messed up. So sorry. Thank you, Nicolo. This is exciting. I have a question about, because as we mentioned before, probably an ORM like Active Record is not like the best way to represent what you can do with GraphQL. So I was thinking, I don't know if you already put some thoughts on using also some other design patterns, like, I don't know, the repository patterns or some other kind of pattern to like structure the code in a way that we have the underlying model that represent how you should how like the essentially the data model of the resources, and then change the way we query GraphQL with some other kind of pattern. I don't have anything in mind specifically at the moment, but just wondering if you had any idea there.
Okay, I think that like the active record pattern is not the pattern that is implemented here, because what I didn't show in the demo before is also that we are actually dealing with different repositories, if you will, because the admin API can be seen as a repository, and also like the customer account API could be seen as a different repository for the same data objects that we might want to deal with. And in the README of the gem, let me get it really quick. And of course, I didn't have it open. And let me share again really quickly. And okay, where is it? If I can actually find it. Okay. This is the most annoying thing that I had to implement, because like the customer model was really messy. And like for this kind of, these can be seen as repositories, if you will. So like to find a specific attribute in the admin API, you need to go like the response So the data layer, the network layer underlying will have this kind of payload. And instead, if it comes from the customer account repository API, it will have like these paths. So of course, it's not strictly active record pattern, but like there is something like that's coming from the repository pattern and other things. I don't know if these answer your questions.
Yeah, I think what I had in mind, I mean, it's still a bit not defined, but what happened in the past is that you might have like to query products in two different ways because you need different attribute and you don't want, you know, to load the full product data every time. So which we are probably used to do with in Rails when we load, like, for example, a product, I mean, it's almost free to get all the attributes we have on the column. But here we have to deal with some like limitation for the rate limit and stuff like that. So maybe, you know, building an abstraction on top of the models that allow us to like keep the code organized and not reinventing like a new query every time we need it, but saying, okay, this is the product for, I don't know, this specific feature, this specific need, and this is the product that we need to query for this other thing.
Yeah, that's the thing that I thought of, and that's why I re-implemented the select directive. So you can subset in some particular places the attributes that you want to actually save up on query points. Of course, this gets tedious because if you have to do it in one place or two places, it's easy. But yeah, if you have more places where that kind of context is needed, yeah, maybe we need a different abstraction on that. And yeah, I mostly took like inspiration, to not say copied, the Active Record interface because I liked it, and also it's something that Rails developers are actually used to. However, yeah, I can understand that in some places we can leverage GraphQL to its advantages, and this is a good use case.
Thanks.
Okay.
I think that we
are over time, so I think we can close here.
Okay.
If you have questions, you can do it offline or in the next Shopify user group. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nicolo.
Oh, it was amazing. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.